Hello, friends. Welcome to the Your Project Shepherd podcast. I'm your host, Curtis Lawson, and we are here to teach that every successful construction project has 4 components demonstrated by this simple drawing of a house. The foundation is proper planning. The left wall is your team, the right wall is communication, and the roof is proper execution. Have all 4 of these components in place and your project will succeed. We're here to help professionals and homeowners alike make the best decisions about designing, planning, and building custom homes. If you'd like more information about how Shepherd can help you with your project or business, visit us at yourprojectshepherd.com. And now, here's today's episode. Hey everybody, welcome to the Your Project Shepherd podcast. I am Curtis Lawson, and today I am joined by not one, but 2 guests. I am joined by Cate Black with Cate Black Architecture Studio. Cate's one of the few architects who are practicing on Galveston Island here in Southeast Texas, and she primarily deals with coastal homes, so I thought she'd be a great person to have on today to have a discussion about special considerations for building coastal homes. So thanks for joining us, Cate.
Thank you for having me.
So why don't you go ahead and take just a minute and tell us about kind of what your history is and what you do and how you came to be designing on the island.
Sure. So I've been in Galveston for 13 years. In February, actually like a week ago.
There you go.
It's my 13th anniversary here. I went to school at U of H. I grew up in Houston, and I worked a little bit after grad school in Houston, but the majority of my career has been in Galveston. I started my own practice or firm, small business, 6 years ago. I also had my 6-year anniversary of that in January. So 6 years ago. And, you know, it was sort of by chance that I ended up working so much in residential. That wasn't, I was like many graduate students where I thought, I don't know what I thought I was going to be designing and building, but structures that change the world.
Right.
And when I moved to Galveston, it was kind of a compromise with my husband to be by the water. And I still worked in Houston and I still commuted. And then eventually I was like, I cannot do this. I need to be in Galveston. I ended up working for another local architect for a little while. And then I worked for a home builder and we still, collaborate lots together. And he had wanted to do a design build and like have it be a proper design build where he had an architect in-house. And so I worked for him for, I guess, 5 years, something like that. Jeff, obviously. Mm-hmm. And when it was time, I wanted to leave. I wanted to do my own thing. I like builders, nothing against builders, but I wanted the separation. So I started my own business, and he just stopped having a design portion and he just focused on being a builder. From working with him for so long, I had thought when I started my own practice, I was like, well, I'm going to do more commercial stuff. But I actually just really like residential. I love the scale of it. I love working with clients in that way. And it's so funny because residential is one of the least regulated. Single family residential is one of the least regulated.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the most details per square foot.
Yeah.
Right?
It really is.
It's crazy that's the case, but I'm sorry, I'm going off. But anyways,
great.
I've embraced that. I've finally embraced it. I do small tenant build outs in like historic buildings downtown, which is very fun. Mm-hmm. But 90% of my work is residential. And there are a lot of issues that we face and constraints that we face in Galveston. And as Toner has mentioned, it's, one of probably the most complicated sites in Texas to build on or design on. Yep. But because that's really where all of my residential work has been, I've done that's where it started. And that's really the primary, what I do. I don't even think about it. That's just part of what it is. So.
Yeah. I also have the infamous Toner Kersting with us today from Toner Home Matters. So Toner not only does building performance design is in forensics, as we've talked about on the show numerous times, but he's also brilliant enough to own a house in Galveston.
That's right.
And not only a Galveston house, but a historic Galveston house. So he gets the double whammy of it's a coastal house and it's historic and all the issues that go into both of those things.
Most definitely. We've had an office down on the island for about 6 years now. So
Oh yeah, because you reached. I remember you reaching out to me right when.
That's right. That's right. And Galveston is a funny place. It's very, very small community. Everyone knows each other. So you normally just get a referral to somebody pretty early on.
Yep.
But also we're all very busy down there. There's a lot of work. Galveston is nothing if not an island of opportunity. Right?
Absolutely.
It always has been.
That sounds like a slogan for the development board for Galveston. Galveston, the island of opportunity.
It's been an opportunity, but of course you have this.
We should copyright that.
You have this wicked wave that'll eventually come in and wash all the opportunity away.
I know. Slight anxiety. This isn't good. I shouldn't be saying this. It's not good sales for my business.
That's right. But I knew that one of the struggles I had was architecturally finding someone or a group or a firm. I don't really like using the word firm. And
I hate the word firm.
What I do or anything,
yeah.
It reminds me of a Tom Cruise movie. So it feels too cold.
Yes.
I knew that specialization for Galveston is something that we provided, and we needed to provide it architecturally. I saw the lag in the building side because they are reacting to what was presented to them. So for them to come through and modify an already designed structure to meet the criteria that we want, that was impractical, if not impossible, because we have a challenge with our owners on the island. They think, oh, it's just a second home. Oh, it's just a beach house. Oh, it's just the most difficult house that you're going to abandon for more than 3/4 of the year and hope that it's going to come out okay.
Yeah.
So it is a very difficult space, and that's why you specifically doubling down and saying we just do island houses. That specialty is an absolute. Without it, the interpretation is going to be not going to be there, and the opportunity for incorrect design will be very, very high because you just don't know what you don't know. You don't want to experiment down here. So in the pre-conversation prior to this, I was telling you, like, you could have picked any place else would have been easier, right? Like anything else would have been easier. But I was just in Austin last week for projects, and I was telling everybody that, Austin is really just kind of a suburb of Houston at this point.
They hate that.
I'm sure they really liked that.
And I say that to elicit that reaction, and I'm saying environmentally. Right?
Yeah.
What we are correcting in Austin, I corrected 10 years ago, 15 years ago in Houston. But what I started correcting in Houston 5-10 years ago, I had already been correcting in Galveston. It is Galveston first, then Houston, then Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, everything, because the climate migration, I feel like, comes through the port of Galveston. There's a tanker out there named Climate Migration, and it's unloading, and it's going up 45, right? And it's spreading out.
It's interesting, though, because a lot of people think of Galveston as, hopefully no one actually thinks we're a suburb of anywhere. We're our own island. But people think of Galveston as just an extension of Houston because it is so convenient. But it is not.
No.
It is fully different. The environment is completely different. And
the culture is different.
I tell people, I'm like, we are an island, literally an island that's connected by this one causeway. It's where a major interstate dead ends. Things are going to get weird, right? You have a major interstate that just is like, and now 45 is done, and now you're on this island. Things are just going to get weird.
But it's a soft landing on a beach.
It's a soft landing on a beach. It is. It's a soft landing on a beach. It's a soft landing
on one of the very few pay to get on beaches.
Yes.
Right? Like, hey, you're finally here, but you got to pay for the last 15 feet to get onto the beach.
You don't have to pay to get onto the beach. What are you talking
about?
At the
end of 45 at
You mean the very end to park at Stewart?
To park at Stewart Beach, you got to pay to get on.
Yeah.
You do have to pay.
Right? I mean, you can park on the seawall and walk.
Why are you going there?
I don't go there. Locals don't go to the beach.
No, come on.
Well, no, I go to certain beaches.
I go to the beach.
That I just don't.
I don't pay to go to the beach.
And I don't discuss which beach the locals go to. That's for us to know.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about was
not where you pay to go to the beach.
Not where you park at the beach or paying to
Sorry.
park. I think that in this mentality we've talked about a lot in the past. People always have this thing when they go to build a house of, oh yeah, I've got a buddy who's a contractor.
Yes.
I got a buddy who does house plans or whatever, right? the same mentality kind of bleeds over to going to Galveston. Like, oh, I've got a buddy who's a realtor in the Woodlands.
Yep.
He's going to help me find a lot
Yes.
in Galveston.
Yes.
I've got a buddy who's a contractor in Houston. He's going to build my beach house. But like, that's a terrible idea. You're going to a realtor who doesn't know anything about selecting a lot
Yep.
in a difficult spot.
Full stop.
You know, like
Full stop.
Yes.
you're using somebody who doesn't know how to design a beach house,
Yep.
but you know,
Second
anyway,
full stop.
it's kind of it goes back to our house diagram, right? The first thing you have to do is build your team, right? And so that team's got to be a realtor who's familiar with the
Yep.
area, an architect who's familiar with the area, building performance design.
Engineering.
The whole team has to be experienced in doing those coastal homes. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Well, and even honestly with the realtor, like you said, because especially when people are looking at beachfront lots, I mean, just because the lot is this big does not mean you get to build on all of
Right.
that by any stretch. You could have a lot that is 200 feet long, and depending on where it is, there could be 25 feet of buildable space.
Right.
Period.
There's
and
a
there's
reason-
no exceptions. There's no exceptions
Yeah.
to that.
And there's a reason that some of those properties have been on the market forever
Yes.
and no one's buying
And they're
them.
so cheap.
Like, oh, it's such a great deal.
I
We should buy
know.
this.
I know. And it's so having that, and honestly, not to speak poorly of any realtors either, but even in Galveston, depending on what their knowledge is, if they don't necessarily specify in those beachfront ones, it's like,
Oh yeah, the person who I bought my house with in the Easton Historic District, I would not go to the west end of the island. I wouldn't go
Right.
to Mid Island
right.
with him.
Yeah.
He's great,
Sure.
but he knows historic homes. He does
Right.
not know, the bungalows off of 40th Street, which are awesome, by the way, right? Does not know Cedar Park, does
Right.
not know things down by Avia, and most definitely doesn't know anything past what Hershey Beach is, doesn't even know where that is.
Right. Yeah. So it's and definitely for builders too. And that even high end builders have, when clients have a high end builder in Houston and they build beautiful, beautiful, beautiful work. And so I know they're not trying to use them because they think they're going to be less expensive, because sometimes the higher end, really accomplished builders in Galveston, the price per square foot to build in Galveston is more than in Houston. Pretty significantly, right? For good reason. And it has nothing to do with what tile you're choosing, right? It's the structure and the materials on the exterior. And they'll want to use a builder that they're familiar with here. And I tell them, I'm like, I really think you should speak to local builders. And a builder worth their salt here would also either have somebody to work with on the island who's familiar with it, if they haven't already done that before. I mean, there will be research that goes into it, because it's a fully different, it's just a completely different environment.
Well, it's the trade base too. I mean, I think a lot of builders try to pull their trades down from Houston. And first of all, a lot of those guys, they're like, oh yeah, we'll come do it. And then they get into it and they're like, man, this drive sucks
real
every day. I
long
don't want to do
drive.
this. And then trying to find trades on the island that you've never worked with before can be a crapshoot.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we tell people that using trades from Houston, you move from an 8-hour workday to a 5-hour workday because of the hour and a half ahead and the hour and a half at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Good thing is all the trades on the island are island time, so you're going to get 5 hours out of them anyways. So
Exactly.
everyone's the same.
No.
That's a real thing.
That is, well, but the thing about especially in the summertime, our trades on the island, they will work later in many cases. I see them easily. I've been on jobs at 7:00 at night and they're still working on.
That's cooler.
It's cooler.
Yep.
The wind calms down a little bit towards the end of the evening, especially at low tide. It depends on, and Cate has an extra challenge that she's not just beach houses. She's beach houses. She's estuary houses. She's bay houses. She's canal houses. Those are all their own little idiosyncrasies. And then she has all the regulations, like all of the structural regulations, all of the windstorm regulations, the flood regulations. So you have to be just an awesome pro at keeping up with all that stuff.
And a lot of some of it was working for a builder, right, who was a good builder and kind of learning a lot of this from them. And then I sat on the planning commission for the city of Galveston for 4 years. And even through that, I learned, part of me being on there was because I already knew, But then also learning even more about it from that and our comprehensive planning and everything like that within the city of Galveston is useful information to have. I would say that you mentioned like HOAs, and some HOAs are design based, of course, but a lot of it is just looking at the setbacks and, different regulations, because the lots are all fairly similar, like the sizing of them. They're small. Like, especially compared to Houston, they're small and they get tall. That's something else that clients sometimes don't realize, is that their square footage doesn't go as far.
Right.
They have an idea of a 3,000 square foot house because it's a 1-story house. You make that 3 stories above ground, so 4 stories, and you tie in an elevator with that.
I had that conversation.
It's a much smaller house.
With someone in Dallas who is they're looking for a lot on the island right now, and they're like, well, the houses down there are huge. I'm like, no. You think they're huge.
Yeah.
They're tall, and you can't back up to see them. So you're always looking from 8 feet off the edge of the wall straight up.
Yeah.
They all look like they're humongous towers of architecture. They're actually little postage stamps stacked on top of each other with a bunch of useless space on the first floor, on the ground floor.
Yeah, to park. It's
To
parking.
park. You feel like you got a lot of parking though, right? Like,
Yeah.
I can put a ton of toys
Yes.
under these houses.
Yeah.
So one of the issues that I think people don't think about in relation to the lot is in HOAs is access to the beach is one thing, and then blocking the view or the situation of the view, right? Because people want a beach house for the view of the ocean,
Right.
and they don't take into account how other houses are going to block their view, but also if they are going to block other people too. Some HOAs, and I'm not sure if this is the case in Galveston, but in some coastal towns, you have to take into account how you're going to be affecting everybody else's access.
No.
Not in Galveston.
No. So very.
It's not Seaside, Florida.
No, it's Texas. No, it's like, no, you get to do what you want with your own property.
Gotcha.
I mean, to some degree, I would say the newer developments have kept that in mind, and they've staggered the lots better.
Yeah.
Right. So some of the newer developments have done that. And that's part of why people go up high though. And it's like, they're like little cakes, right? So the top floor is smaller. And so you're not, the blocking people's views isn't going to be as
Right.
much of an issue, but that is part of why people go higher, so they can see. I mean, if you're the beachfront and you have that 3rd floor, you just have an amazing view regardless. But if you're, 3, 4, 5 rows back from the beach, if you're not first row and you get that 3rd floor, when I say third, ground floor is ground.
Right.
First, second, third floor is a conditioned 3rd floor. You're 55 feet in the air. That 3rd floor, even from, you can get all the way back to 3005, the big, highway that runs through, and you can see water on both sides.
Both sides.
You can see the bay, you can see the beach. It's actually like a very beautiful view, and in 50 years, you'll still have a lot. So,
Yeah.
I mean.
Any height restrictions in any of the HOAs down there?
Yes, yeah. But I've yet to not be able to meet that. They're pretty high.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty high.
Yeah. I mean, and even then, I mean, like the day of us putting a widow's walk on top of structures, I think we're kind of past that.
Yeah, the cupola.
The cupola, man, the cupola, that thing is the octagon nightmare. So just managing through that. And I understand totally why people want those kind of architectural aspects. I do have a tremendous amount of performance issues related to them. The good thing is with the American Heritage Architecture, which is primarily, I mean, like, when was the last mod that you did? Like, no one really wants it, right?
Some people do want it, but ironically, the people who want to purchase lots in neighborhoods that don't allow it. So there's not a whole lot I can do about that.
Got it.
Some of that too, though, is that the communities that do allow mod, like Pirates, there's not very many lots to purchase in those areas. It's the older neighborhoods that had less design restrictions, and they're pretty full up.
Yep.
They're bought up, So we don't have a whole lot of
That does
modern
not
architecture.
does not break my heart.
Yeah.
I'll bring up Austin again. One reason why we have so many forensic issues is contemporary architecture itself is not a very resilient type of architecture. Soffits and fascias have a purpose, right? Covered porches have a purpose. So when you have these big cubist boxes there that have no veil breaks and tons of moisture coming down the walls because of no shading or overhangs, they fail in Austin. They melt like sticks of butter on the island.
Yeah.
So I've had more teardowns related to old 70s and 60s contemporary architecture than I would be give me a 60s. I'll take an English Tudor from 1960 on the island. That will work better than that contemporary from 1960.
Well, some of it, and when we're thinking of windstorm and we're thinking of rain and actually like, the rain flowing off and not having, I guess a flat roof for windstorm would be good.
Yeah, not hurting it.
But it fails. And any of the good builders I know, no one says if it fails, it's when it fails. It doesn't matter. It's going to fail. That's probably one of my biggest conversations that I have with people, because not so much wanting the modern look, but wanting to be able to put a waterproof deck over conditioned space. And just having to say, listen, guys, I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. There's some things where I used to be like, well, I guess a little bit here and there. And now I'm like, no, we're just not going to do it. Because it is a when. Absolutely. It is when it's going to fail, period. So.
Yeah. What are some other kind of non-environmental, non-building performance kind of planning issues? Are there issues with things like lots that haven't been developed yet and actually getting utilities to them, power, fresh water, natural gas, all those sorts of things? Or is that not an issue in Galveston where it's been developed so much already? So
much of it has been developed, and really the place, from what my experience is any of the places where people are purchasing lots, it's where development is happening. I don't know anyone who's bought like a big swath of land that they're now trying to develop themselves. And we're remote, but not so remote that getting utilities and things like that would be an issue. In a different point in time, I'm sure it was. But at this point, almost the full, span of the island has been developed.
I would say we need to remember this is one of the oldest parts of developed land in the state.
Yeah.
So we do have infrastructure that is extremely old.
Yes.
And we do see failings from that on a pretty regular basis. The farther you get away from the east end of the island, the less and less it is. But also, Galveston developed in these, spits and spats. It would have a big boom, and then it would have the really, really low time, and then it would have a big boom. And we're kind of back in a boom right now with our cruise culture and all this other kind of stuff. But we struggle with the similar issues that other communities of this size. And Galveston's over 30,000 people. It is not
over 50.
50, sorry.
Yeah.
Jeez.
47,800 or something
47.
like that.
That's before people come on the island to visit us.
Yes.
Which is
that's residents, right?
That's actual residents.
Yeah.
That's not even like the UTMB students.
I don't stay on the island during Mardi Gras. You have to, because you live there full time.
And I love it.
Oh, no.
Oh, my God. Mardi Gras is the best.
Well, I also live down almost on this. Live in the middle of it. So
same. I love it.
But you stay for Motorcycle Week?
No.
I do not do that.
God, no.
Isn't Mardi Gras there like the second biggest Mardi Gras outside of New Orleans?
Yes,
no, it's not actually.
Not?
No, I just researched this. I was looking it up. It's not. It's like the fourth.
Oh, no.
I know.
That's what they used to always say.
It's not true.
What's 2 and 3?
Like Biloxi apparently has a big one.
What?
And somewhere, I'm not going to quote another one because I know I don't know if I get it right. But no, we were like the fourth. I looked it up because I was curious this last round.
It's still huge,
though. It's a wonderful, and maybe the count isn't, just the last few years, it's really, it's gotten good.
Maybe we lost it over
good.
COVID. Maybe someone came back better than we did.
It's possible. But yeah, during things like, what Toner's saying, during Biker Rally, I think it's an influx of like 500,000 people on a weekend. Mardi Gras brings in about 300,000. What else we got? We got Dickens on the Strand. That brings like 150, maybe 100. Yeah. But it's one of my favorite. But it is. You have these things that, Christmas is great. Holidays are great. But I actually really like Dickens on the Strand that starts it. And then Mardi Gras that caps it off. Those are the fun times.
I love the new addition of all the Juneteenth celebrating. That has really come together, well organized now. So that's been
long overdue.
We have a lot of cool civic art projects that occurred over that. So that is a very valuable part of the island that wasn't established well. And then we have the new cruise ports, which are going to be huge.
Yes.
We have our first, Disney boat. We have our first Carnival boat and Royal Caribbean boat, all made for just Galveston. And now there's a battleship being restored right there on the water. I know. So we get to go see it. I was having coffee over there on the water. I was like, what the heck? Why are those guns pointed towards me? Oh, it's a battleship.
It's a battleship.
So it is I've been real happy. Probably, I mean, my kids are older than yours, but I was so happy to raise my kids down there because it's a very unique.
We're getting a new ball high too.
That's right. We're getting a new ball
high school.
Yes.
Awesome.
And this is like a big commercial for Galveston now.
I know.
Say, what was your tagline that you thought of earlier?
The island of opportunity.
The island of opportunity.
Yes.
Man.
Yeah.
Yes.
So speaking of which.
But it's not that great. No one else needs to move down there.
No.
We're good. We're solid.
My wife
we
does.
are solid.
She pretends like she's pushing the handle down on TNT when we cross the bridge, blowing it up. No one else can come over here. It's just us.
Just us.
So speaking of that, who's your clientele?
So most of my clientele, well, okay, let me say this. It used to be, it went through a big surge during COVID of a lot of Airbnb. People who planned to use the house for themselves, but understood they weren't going to be there that often and wanted to rent it out. Those are not my clients anymore. I don't take them on because for them, the investment is too high to actually build it and design it to what I want it to be. And I don't see that as a benefit for the island because I do actually care about these houses making it through a big storm. I care about them when they're in frame stage making it through a small storm because I have had houses fall down during framing. That went with a builder that I didn't recommend. Went with a builder that I actually very much said, do not use. And I watched all of that lumber go to waste. And that hurts my heart, right? That really does. So now most of my clients are either people who they want a second home, but they plan on using it quite a bit, and they do. This is their retirement home, or doing people who already live there and doing addition renovations to their houses or building a new house. They're going to move, things like that. And that's what I want, because I want a house that I designed to get used. And I want to know the people who are going to use it, right?
I feel like a lot of the clients that we've seen from Cate recently, especially those that have existing structures, I feel like they're almost gifting the structure now. Hey, little house, you've done us really well, and we want to make you pretty now.
Yeah.
Right? And those are so cool.
Yeah.
Because we get to, they're not always, we need to give you the most square footage, but we need to give you all the things that you have not had for a long time. And we get to finally go into some of these existing structures and redo these infrastructure points that have always been ignored.
Right.
I get to do envelope stuff and really all new electrical and all new plumbing and all new mechanicals and think through how it's being utilized. And some of those are graduating to full-time residencies
Exactly.
too. And those are really cool. We have that one really cool low slope kind of late 61. I'm so excited for that one, where we're pushing out the back, getting closer to the water than they ever have been before, and doing all these bits and pieces. Although sometimes I feel like I disappoint people because they're all excited about all these pretty things. I'm like, well, but I actually see the things that you know were there, so let's go through it.
Well, and I say now, whenever I get an addition renovation, I let them know, like, toner is like a must, not a maybe. For new construction, I still really push them towards him. But if they decide that it's not where they're going to go, I'm not just going to completely walk. But I just won't do an addition renovation without bringing in his knowledge, because especially for the homes, like the little 60s ones, where people are going to retire there, I'm like, guys, mold, mildew, this could be very bad for your health. You know, if this is going to be your full-time residence and this is where you want to retire and live, I just can't, in good consciousness, say this is going to work out for you if you don't use someone. Because on my own home, which Toner gave me flack for not bringing him in, but to my defense, I was like pregnant in the middle of doing this. But I have a 1910 cottage, and we did an addition to it before my second child was born. Right before my second child was born, didn't complete it till after my second child was born, right? And it was a very small detail that got missed. Yeah. That made a really bad mistake in my home. And luckily it wasn't in a huge part, but in a little hallway, I had mold coming down from the ceiling through the walls. It was from the attic. Yeah. And I I think I'm good.
Yeah,
I think I'm good. I think I'm a good architect. I think I'm knowledgeable about this stuff. I was pregnant. I was in the middle of doing a bunch, but I fully missed a very obvious ventilation issue that I think a lot of people would have missed, though, is the problem. It's obvious once Toner says it, but prior to him saying it, it might not be that obvious. And, I had kids around, small children, and that freaked me out, right? And I immediately got it remedied, and, he put me in touch with people I needed to use. But I think about, people who are older, and are planning on retiring. And the last thing I want for them is to be inhaling mold, just having that be like a part of what's happening in their new home.
Yeah. I think people think, beach houses always smell musty. It's okay. It's
okay. It is not okay, my friend.
It is not supposed to smell musty, okay?
I know. I'm like, that is not. And you're right, especially because I think in some of the 70s, 80s, even like early 90s, homes where they enclosed the ground floor for part of it.
Oh, no.
Oh, my gosh. Because you could only have a certain amount of enclosure on that ground floor, right? 299 square feet for a lot of the zones. And that's not even necessarily conditioned. That just means it's not like fully open walls, right? And then after construction, they go back.
People do lots of stuff after that final permit.
People do a lot
final
of stuff after that final
issued.
permit. And Galveston's starting to crack down on that, though. It really is. And because there's a reason. There is a reason for those rules, right? Yeah. And, that goes into the safety of the structure, et cetera, et cetera. But people enclose those. Well, and then that then affects the rest of their house a lot of times, right? Because it's opening up into the rest of the home.
Yep.
And it's just a real...
It is super difficult to fix afterwards. And that whole, it's when I have one elevator shaft that bridges from the ground floor all the way up to the third floor. And that elevator shaft wall is a breakaway wall. Can you define what a breakaway wall for everyone is?
Yeah, so a breakaway wall is when it's not actually connected to the structure. Like, so if you're in a VE zone, which is like velocity, if the velocity of the velocity of a wave from a big storm comes through, that wall will break away from the structure versus pulling on the structure. So it is not, it's basically like tacked in there versus being fully structurally connected to the pilings, to the foundation actual slab, the way people think about it. Yeah. It is a sacrificial wall.
It is.
So, yeah.
And I'm glad we're saying that because it is calling it a lick and stick wall at the most.
Yeah.
And that is the leakiest wall assembly in an area under a house on the ground floor where it's bridge effect. The velocity of the air increases due to the constrained pressure from the ground and the floor above. So as that velocity increases, it increases the wind load and the humidity percentage. And then additionally, because we're on the island, it's a salt-laden humidity.
Yes.
Which is different because as it starts to collect in the materials, it turns into a desiccant dehumidifier. So as the wood and the sheetrock and the cellulose material, even the concrete starts to absorb that salt, it starts attracting its own moisture when we don't have wind-driven moisture. It's like the worst effect ever. So all that comes in and it wants to get to lower pressure. It wants to get dry and it wants to get cool. And that's right above it. So it's like a Roman candle of heat and moisture and nastiest straight upstairs. And then it just explodes out into the house. And the elevator shaft on the first floor is so prevalent because going up and down those 4 stories technically is difficult. So we're working to... I know how to resolve that, but architecturally it doesn't look good.
Yeah, I don't. This is where I don't stand with Toner. We're not putting a lift on the outside.
And I want like an elevator shaft on the outside.
No.
But if we don't start getting into it, right? Like how do we make this work better? So I'm trying to go to the city and get an exclusion for the elevator shaft walls.
Right, which is something I still need to look into that.
Yeah, we need to, because this is a life health safety standard.
Right.
And we've done this in other coastal communities where they give us technically, I think it's 12 linear feet of walls, which is technically about an elevator shaft.
Yeah, because an elevator shaft is like 35 square feet.
Yeah. So all I need is that, and they don't count the door.
Oh.
So all I need is, I'm going to ask for 15. Let's try to get a little bit of wiggle room in that. So.
And it's, so I know an elevator sound, I mean, people, sometimes clients are like, oh my God, I don't need an elevator. And it sounds like this real, like decadent or bougie, indulgent thing. I'm like, what happens when you sprain your ankle running? And then you have, your first floor is minimum 15 feet in the air. You walk up those stairs? You gonna hobble up?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know,
With
what
groceries?
about with groceries? And so even when it is a price constraint, which I very much understand, but if a client is pretty set on not doing an elevator, I say, okay, well, we're doing a shaft.
Yep.
We're still having the shaft. We're going to have it engineered for that. It'll be in the concrete below. You'll have your pit. We'll be able to cut out, you know, in the floor if you need to add it in, because it just, you can't not be prepared for that. It's unfortunate, but if you're going to live on the island and you're going to live on one of these raised homes, you got to be prepared for that.
They're not that expensive, though. I mean, like
They've gotten more affordable.
A base elevator in the 30 to 50 range when you're spending a good amount of money building a house is not that high a percentage of your budget.
It's not that high. I think it's, for younger people, it's a very hard, like, pill to swallow, though. You know, for, when I say younger, I mean like 40s.
Yeah.
Well,
For the young folks.
We're young.
and they're going to have guests, right? It's not just them.
It's not just them. And that's what I tell them too. I'm like, what about when your grandmother visits?
Sure.
You know, like this is high. People who haven't lived in that yet. And I mean, my house, I'm in a very high part of the island. You know, I'm in like a raised cottage, but it's only 2.5 feet above ground. But I walk these houses all the time, right? And oh my God, when I was pregnant with my first kid, it's all about pregnancy. When I was pregnant with my first kid, had a house on Sportsman, and it was.
You did?
Yes, it was a tiny little. It was a tiny little house. It was because they were replacing. It's, you know, Galveston used to just, it was like bait camps, right? It was not
Especially Sportsman.
Yeah, especially
It was
Sportsman.
fish camp, and that's
yeah. So it was a little bait camp, and they lost it in Ike, and they were finally replacing it, and it was maybe 1,000 square feet. I think it was a little bit less. 20 feet. It was 20 feet in the air to the finished floor. 20 feet. Or actually, that might have been to the bottom of the stringer. So like 22 feet.
You were prego going up and down this?
Oh my God. I was so pregnant. And it was like the end of my pregnancy. And it was a straight run. I mean, there's a landing, but it was just a straight run, single landing. And I was like, okay, all right. And it was being completed it was the winter, so it was so windy.
So
Walking up that.
You lived on what I believe there are 3 of the most difficult streets in the entire state of Texas.
Oh, Sportsman.
Sportsman,
100%.
Teichman,
Yep.
and Christmas Tree. My gosh. Yes, Christmas Tree Point Drive. Let's just make sure we get as many names as possible in that street. Christmas Tree Point Drive was, of course, some of the most beautiful real estate on the island.
Yes.
Very, very complicated structures were built there.
Yes.
Since the late 70s,
Yep.
on and off.
Well, that's where that was the bougie.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
You got to get to Christmas. It's like, ooh, you have a house on Christmas
tree, which is such a goofy island street name. Like, why do you,
Great.
on the island, you have a Christmas tree?
There's
But-
Cartagena right next to
Yes,
it.
that's
It was
right.
some very interesting naming of streets. It's like, and now we go, to Cartagena.
I think there's 28 houses on Christmas Tree, Maine. I've been to 17 of them for massive forensic photos,
Wow.
right? It's just kind of.
But that's a good part of that is, and we kind of said this with it, used to just be like bait camps, fish camps. I mean, when people don't understand why it's more difficult now, or they don't, and if I try to explain why I would like them to talk to Toner, like, this isn't the same as your grandfather's house that was here, at all. And we did have, and they're like, well, if you have like Victorian homes, I'm like, we do. And those things are
not awesome either.
Yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into it. Do you want all that work? Just trying to keep the mold out, And if you look at, I'm sorry, I'm going like 2 different places here. Okay, so it used to be all the West End was these tiny little houses, And even when the Mitchells, because the Mitchell family is who developed Pirates, which was kind of the first like higher end-ish.
It was, yeah.
Community. I am not a Galvestonian I'm not a Galveston historian or an architectural historian, so I just have to preface that before I say these. But this is my general knowledge. So the Mitchell house in Pirates Beach, the first house in Pirates Beach, is still there. It's from the 60s. I actually worked on some renovation work for that house when I first lived on the island with a previous employer. It's small. even that is still small. It's a really cool mid-century piece of architecture. It is so small compared to what people want now. People aren't just trying to, some of them it's because they want to have it be an Airbnb. And so they're trying to fit max amount of people in there, you know, and then some of it is because it is going to be their full-time residence and they want a beach house. They see that as a possibility because more things have been developed and there's utilities and there's all that there. And so all of that is there and they want this to be where they retire and they want something nicer. They don't just want it to be the fish camp. So understanding that our environment, though, when you get bigger, combined with the regulations for energy that have changed since those houses were initially, but I mean, it's huge, right? It's so different. The other thing I was going to say is when people do mention like, well, Galveston has been, you know, you have all of these historic buildings, blah, 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 and like the mansions on Broadway. I'm like, well, those are now run by nonprofits and they're in a constant state
of repair
and care. And they all smell musty.
Yep. It is. I like to explain to people that owning a house on the island is you're technically own a shipwreck. You don't own a house. It is a wooden structure stuck on the beach, and you're either going to constantly repair it or the ocean will reclaim it.
We'll reclaim it.
Yes. And I have a drawer in my house. I have tools under the home, and I have a tool drawer because I'm constantly having to adjust things and change things. And it is a way. But if you live all the way over in Point West, you need to also have a tool drawer in there because, you know, I'll give a great example. The touchpad keys that go deadbolts. You better stock up on 9-volt batteries because you will be changing those things out every 45 days.
Yep.
And then as our envelopes have become so tight, including full glass doors, we're going to have full glass doors on the beach. Absolutely. There's no way someone's going to look out the back and have a wooden door there. So a full glass door is actually tighter than a solid wood door because it meets the NFRC standards. Wood doors are not tested to that standard. Full glass doors are. So all of the air and moisture that is being negated focuses at the lock set and it rusts apart so fast. So I have one on my southern door and I have 8 of those lock sets in boxes in my kitchen cabinets. And I change them out twice a year.
Yeah.
Because they just fall apart.
I mean, I'm 2 blocks off of the beach. I'm like, or 3 blocks, I guess, off the seawall. Bragger. No. I'm behind the spot. It is not bragging.
Oh, you are behind
My
the
God,
spot.
Toner. It's not to tell people where I live. But yes, it's not bragging. It felt like a good choice 10 years ago. Yeah. Anyways, when we did the addition renovation, I put like one of the, you know, code locks, whatever. And it's on the north wall. It's the back of the house because I face south. And yeah, I don't know how long it lasted. I think maybe 4 months.
I mean, those have issues in Houston,
exactly.
even going bad.
I know.
So I can't
I was
imagine
like,
how short they last down there.
Every time I go to the back door, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to even get into my own house.
I know.
It's just going to
I know.
And it just rusts apart.
Well, and people always want fans. They have this vision. There's a vision in people's minds. The vision. And I understand that vision. I get that vision. You do not get to have a fan on your deck when you are a front row on the beach.
No.
You just don't. Like Toner said, the earth will reclaim it from you.
Yep.
I give you back to the sea.
I give you back to the sea.
No. Every coach light that you think that's hanging coach light that you're not going to have to get up there and change out that rusty chain every single year.
Or just anything.
But it's
hanging.
outdoor rated, Toner.
It's outdoor rated. It's outdoor rated. Just anything hanging too. Like if it actually is from a string, I'm like, let's put some stability in that. Let's get that a little bit more rigid. Mm-hmm. We have wind. We have lots of wind. Yes.
The pendulum is swinging and banging against the house.
And it's standard. This isn't standard in Houston, but standard down there is like outswing doors for your exterior doors.
Which is crazy that gets missed all the time.
I don't know.
All of the time.
Mm-mm. No.
You guys understand why we want to swing to the outside, right?
Yeah.
So when the wind blows, it blows it close.
Blow it in the house.
But it is ridiculous how many times I walk into structures forensically, and that is not the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's been like that since, my 1891 home has outswing doors.
Mine doesn't.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But who knows? I mean, things have been changed.
Yeah.
So it could have.
It's annoying. Like when you walk
of course
the front
it's
door,
annoying.
like when I open the front door for someone, it's like, hello.
Yeah,
I
know.
Right at your face.
Come in. I mean, it's most people expect, obviously, to like open the door into your home. but they need to be out swing for obvious reasons, right? For us, it's obvious. But yeah, you want the wind to be blowing it shut, not into the home, because as soon as that wind comes in, you get the uplift, roof comes off, etc. All of that stuff in a great storm.
And then you have your clients that believe they're going to open their doors and windows when it's awesome out.
Yeah.
No one's
doing it.
No one's doing it. And if they do, first thing that happens is every cold surface on your marble and countertop condensed.
Yeah.
Water.
Immediately.
And then I go underneath. I can tell when people do this a lot because their stainless steel sinks drip under the sink.
Oh.
In the cabinet.
Yeah.
So, and you can see, and I look up and I can see the condensation marks on the underside of a stainless steel sink. And I'm like, do you guys leave your doors open all the time? Well, yeah, but how do you know that? I was like, because you have rust under your stainless steel sink. And there's no stainless steel. We've had this, you and I have this conversation all the time. That there's no, it's surgical grade. What does that mean?
What does that mean?
It's like, that's nothing. So,
do the surgeons do surgery outside on the on the deck of the beach house?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's
hard to understand the salt air if you're not in it. I mean, people, because in Houston, you also think like, oh, it's salt. No, it is a whole new level. I mean, when you're so close to the salt air,
it's debilitating. And they believe in a garage. They think, okay, well, I'm going to put my car in a garage and that'll keep it clean. No, it makes it worse because the air that gets into the garage, which none of these assemblies can manage, 31 mile an hour air, it's just going to stir in there and it's going to settle in. It is so heavy and so dank. That's why you literally see garage door openers with buckets, plastic buckets put around them because they're trying to not replace their garage door opener every year.
Yeah.
Right? And I've replaced mine 3 times.
There's nothing the amount of, it's not all about children in my life, but the amount of strollers I've gone through, like Bob strollers that are stainless steel.
Oh, we could talk about bikes and.
Oh, yeah. And bikes. I mean, everything. It's, and I keep them indoors.
Yep. I went to a 1982 steel Trek so that I can actually use a blade and scrape and file off the rust. So that's actually that quality is steel.
Yeah.
So there's no paint left on it. It looks horrible, but at least it's not completely.
But it's not completely rusted.
I can fix it. I can actually fix it.
Yeah.
So your clients are now. How often do you get someone from that's not a Houstonian?
A lot.
Really?
Yeah.
How do they know about the island? Like, what's the deal?
What do you mean? How they know about the island?
Because like when I go to Dallas, and I'm from Dallas, and I have a twin brother, and I remember when I told him that we've got our first place on the island, he's like, the water's so brown there. I'm like, oh, really? So how's the beach in Dallas? Right? My brown water is a hell of a lot better than your nothing.
Well, also people don't understand. This is not for everyone to know, but actually, when you get past the seawall, it's blue. There's a reason why it's called the Blue Water Highway. Because you're past like the places of the jetties and the way the winds are moving. It's actually always, it might be like gray. It's not brown though.
No.
So yeah, these people building these homes down there, I mean, they're getting their little slice. No, but I get people from, did you just ask me where I get people from or did you ask me?
I asked you who you got them, where your clients came from, but.
It's a lot of Houstonians, but it's actually, I do get a decent amount from Dallas and around there. Yeah.
I guess we do. We have one from Dallas right now.
Yeah.
Who actually happens to live on the same street as my twin brother. Like they bumped into each other.
Well, they're actually from Houston. That's right. My client.
That's right. His dad is on the same street. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. Small world right there.
Yes.
But what about the deep island? Like when we're talking about the master plan communities all the way at the end where they have architectural boards. Do those architectural boards, are they seeing the challenges that you see or are they still kind of pedestrian? And I know I'm not talking about any particular neighborhood, so I'm not trying to get you in trouble.
Yep.
But I feel like
I'm gonna bite my tongue.
I feel like the neighborhoods could do more to support the proper type of build.
They're really some of it. I mean, it's just the architectural boards. I'm thinking of one in particular, but they don't have an architect on there. They don't have anyone with architecture background. It's like an HOA, but it is an architectural review board, and then they have an HOA separately, and it's one of the communities that is kind of booming the most right now. And they're focusing on the design elements, but not necessarily the quality of the build. But I don't know that it's for them. Like you would actually need to have someone with more experience. I mean, what I think another community does is they actually have an architect who reviews plans and looks at all of this. And to me, I'm like, if you're gonna do it. Do it right. I know it, like, I was very briefly a town architect for a community, and then I stepped down. It was a nutty community. I was like, oh no, you can't possibly pay me enough to do this. So I get that it can be quite an arduous job, but I think it is really important. I mean, you can't just because someone has lived in a home does not mean that they should be expected to fully understand plans and construction details and all of that.
It's usually like the retired guy who doesn't have anything else to do. He's like, oh, I'll do that for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. What it is.
But the best communities will charge I say the best communities. Many good communities will charge a architectural review fee, and then they'll outsource that to an architect or a firm to do it for them.
Except this one that I speak of charges all of those fees, but I don't know where they go to.
I don't know either.
Because it's a volunteer board. I mean, it goes to the community.
Yeah. They don't have any teeth either when it comes to changing things. They serve, but they didn't create the standards, so they're almost a servant to the standards, which needed to be modified. It's just
it can be really tricky because sometimes common sense gets lost in it, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's really just understanding it from this point of like, well, the guidelines say, you're like, this is true. The guidelines do say that. And this is another interpretation of them that serves this better, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, you can take that out and now, you have a worse product. So what's better, right? What do we want to do?
Yeah.
I'm going to not say, I just can't say that much because I'm just going to get myself in trouble.
So let's kind of get back to like building performance. What are your biggest forensic issues that you come across, specifically speaking about new construction on the island? What do you encounter the most, Toner?
Sure. So we've had, there is nothing in the code that manages water vapor. Nothing currently for any house in the state of Texas. And that is my chief dynamic that I'm trying to manage through, because we design for resiliency, not sustainability, not energy efficiency. If we have a resilient home, we have an energy efficient home. We have a sustainable home. That's a byproduct. So, but that wall assembly is challenging on the island because of windstorm. So those parts and pieces that I want to apply change the windstorm code or application of the code. The good thing is in the state of Texas, if we have an engineer who signs off on it, we're pretty good to go. So then we get to the next stage, which is I have to meet with these engineers and tell them their business, which is always fun, right? To sit down and go, hey, you do understand that you affect the performance of this home beyond structural capabilities. And we've been working on this. There was a time probably 4 years ago that internally we said, we're just going to stop doing new construction on the island because we couldn't get any traction with the right architect, the right engineer, with the city, with the builders, nothing. And in island style, it all kind of came together organically, right? You can't force this island to do anything. Nature will prevail. And I think nature prevailed here and got us into, we have a good little team going now of cognizant folks. And a lot of that has to do with Cate. Because the architect is the Sherpa, right? Like she's educating. It's a little Dalai Lama. It's a little I carry your stuff for you and I take you up this mountain. And we were almost negated at that level. So when Cate came on, and then we had some builders who have come back around, and some of them were like, "Hey, I would do anything you tell me to do." But I don't want to lose jobs over it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that was the economics of the situation.
Yeah.
And so that's there now. So I can modify these envelopes, and it's amazing. I was in a structure walking it, and we did all of our envelope build the exact way I want to do it. And this white F-250, which, that means it's a builder, comes pulling up, right? And he gets out. And I drive a very particular vehicle, so he kind of knew that it was me. He's like, I heard about you, and I don't know how you could get this past the city. I'm like, what do you mean get it past the city? I walk over to the green tag. I was like, we're past the city. I was like, what part of past the city? He was like, they won't approve this. I'm like, well, they approved it like 3 times at this point. And he's like, well, it doesn't get through windstorm. I'm like, it does get through windstorm. He goes, my engineer won't do it. I was like, yeah, because your engineer sucks. I've met him. He's not cool. That's why you're here, right? I was like, so once we're past that and I can manage this air, vapor, bulk moisture, pressure differential, and thermal differential in one plane, cognizantly, with the fewest amount of steps possible, because it is the island, right? I love our folks down there, but it's still island time, yo. We're moving through this. So the easier I can make it for everyone, the more likely it will succeed. Now we have those parts and pieces in place. And we actually have other alternatives now. We have ICF finally fixed. Like, that was just a wreck because the way it was distributed and sold and applied, and it was like a homebrew. Like, remember there's a guy on Avia who made his own ICF house. It's been like 3 years to do. It was right next to the park. We didn't know that house. Yeah. And there was that ICF church they finally tore down.
They did tear it down.
They finally tore it down. Yes.
It was sad.
Sad. That was sad for that whole congregation. They lost a ton, but that lot sold for, anyways. Yeah. So small town conversation. Once I have that envelope under control, then everything else can respond to it. And before we did this, the AC guy thought he was the king. He thought he made it rain down there.
But because he literally did.
He literally
Yeah,
did.
the AC guy can make it
Such
rain.
a bad joke. I'm sorry to all of the good AC trades out there. I didn't mean that.
But AC is so reactionary. It is not a proactive tool. So we were trying to overburden this. The next thing that we had to do on new construction is show that these parts and pieces are not as costly as we would think they would be. Mm-hmm. And that comes from efficiency of scale, right? This time next year, I could compare the cost of those applications to what it was 2 years ago, and it's going to be dramatically less.
Yeah.
Because that greenium kind of goes away, that newness. And then the more we work with this, the more you can implement it into cognizant design, right? And that's really where our savings are. When everything is known at the beginning, it's all in front of you now. Right. You get to build that puzzle, and we don't have to try to put a piece in later on. Right. And that was really the biggest missing piece. And I mean, I would say there's 8 active architects residentially on Galveston Island. Maybe 2 understand this.
Are there 8 active residential?
Yeah, some of them only do like 1 or 2. And I'm counting Tiki in that.
Oh, okay.
And I'm counting Bayou, Vista,
okay.
stuff like that, right? So more than just the island. I know you don't go to Bayou Vista. I understand, Cate. It's okay.
I have to say,
Bayou Vista.
It's the other side of the bridge.
I work in Tiki, but it's true. I would rather drive 35 minutes to Point West than go over the causeway and only 20 minutes to Tiki. I don't know why. I do a lot of work in Tiki, though. I do.
Psychosomatic. It
is.
I know.
I have like multiple new addition renovations that you'll be hearing from soon in Tiki. And I was like, all right, guys, I think you're going to have to measure them all in one day for the as-built. We just want to go there once. It's like, what is wrong with me?
So far.
It's so far. We have to cross the causeway.
It's
Because
so
it gives
crazy.
you anxiety to go. I mean,
It does.
It's a lot.
And you're right. And I'll drive to Point West twice in a day and not think anything of it.
I won't think no, because it's lovely.
Yes. And I'm passing 40 other projects on the way there.
I know.
So I can always stop in and see something else.
That's exactly right. It feels productive.
We get to wear flip-flops to work if there's no builder there.
And if there's if it's not muddy.
Yes. I mean, I wear flip-flops, and then I have actual boat shoes in the car.
I have
and I'm
boots in my car.
I got to put those on.
I know.
Yeah. So, and then we have Bolivar as a whole other consideration.
I have work on Bolivar now, too.
Which is a totally different world.
I don't know if they're ever going to call you Toner.
I don't know either. And Bolivar is predominantly Beaumont builders, which is crazy, right? That's Beaumont's island.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
not technically an island,
but yeah.
Beaumont's Galveston is Bolivar, and Bolivar is awesome in its own right. We do a ton of forensics.
I'm
down
sure.
There. Yes.
Yeah.
We actually get paid by some of the big STR companies because they know by complaint that
there's
issues in these structures.
STR being short-term rental.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we need to do a whole conversation on building for STRs and the constraints and the issues and the challenges that come from that. And we're seeing a big bunch of changes in our neighborhoods on the island regarding STRs.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
I could go off on that. I won't.
If you have not looked up what Fredericksburg did to their STR market, it is absolutely glorious.
Oh, I will look into that.
You need to look it up. Yeah, it's
excellent.
It's the first regulation that has reset for locals the way that we should be doing it.
Well, because Texas has a real hard time regulating.
Yeah, they do.
Anything. Mm-hmm. And so Galveston has had a real hard time regulating. I'm not even going to go off. It's a whole other, I get real.
Yeah.
Anyways,
so, and that
new construction.
Yes.
On the island.
Yeah, new construction. On so we can manage the envelope, put the AC in second place where it needs to be, right? And then explain to the owners how to operate this home, how to manage the home. It's going to be occupied. It's going to be unoccupied. It's going to have different age groups. It's going to be rented, not rented. And then all the activities that come from it. And we're here to have fun, right? We're not going down there just to sleep. We're fishing, we're surfing, we're just hanging out on the beach, we're drinking, we're Mardi Gras, we're motorcycling, whatever. There's always something else going on in these houses.
Right.
So you have all of these specialties that you have to bring into play. Do you all do the boathouse? Do you design the boathouses and everything too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but those usually aren't conditioned spaces.
No, they're not. But you still have to know pylons and just to make things extra.
Yeah,
but you got to build on water too.
I just toss that in. And then toss it over the structural engineer. I'm like, have fun with this.
So I think to try to pull this back, we've meandering all over the place.
I know.
You know, I think building in Houston or anywhere else, you know, the details are important, right? But the details become so much more important when you're being blasted with 30 mile an hour or more wind constantly, right? So, you know, up here on the mainland, if some of our flashing around penetrations isn't great, it's probably going to be okay most of the time. But down there, if that stuff's not flashed properly, not waterproof properly, and it's getting blasted all day long, it's not going to be okay, right? So I think, in fact, Toner and I were both consulting on a project recently where they used some great products. They zip the house, they tape the seams,
did everything.
They put the siding on, but then after the siding's on, guess what? They came back and cut holes in it and popped their vents through for the bath fans.
Yeah.
Problem.
And what happened? You know, 6 months or 3 months later, what happened to those bath fans?
They all started tripping.
The bath fans all stopped working. They got mold. They got rust, and bath fans and the kitchen
hood vent.
The range hood rusted out within 3 months of the people moving in the house.
Wow.
Because it's on this big exposed windward wall of the house, get blasted all day long, and all the stuff's toast.
It's hard because it feels like these are like, people hear this and think it's one off.
It's not.
But it's not one off, you know? And I see new homes, and I will drive by them, like ones on the West End, and I can see the flashing, right? I mean, I can see like on some of the exterior stuff that's going on and drip edges and all of that and things that have not been done properly. And that's not even a moisture thing. I mean, it is a moisture thing, but just from the exterior, I see all the seams starting to, bust. Thank you. Open up, right? I see where air gaps are starting to form. And we're talking about a house that's like 6 months old, maybe just finished construction sometimes, right? And it's all just starting to separate. Everything is starting to separate. And you don't necessarily, like Toner mentioned with new builds, trying to work to educate homeowners. But sometimes homeowners, I haven't had this that often, but recently with a client that we're sharing, they're like, well, isn't this what my engineer does? And they think we have like an MEP. I'm like, oh no. You don't have that. And even if you did, it's still not the same.
It's still not relevant.
It's still, but they think there is somebody else already handling that. And I'm like, no, there's not. It's a trade. And you're just kind of trusting that your builder has chosen a AC trade, that is going to do this correctly, and that they are coordinating with all of the other trade. It's like, no, it's not already done.
Yeah.
It's not already done. And I do appreciate that Toner's also, with new construction, I mean, some of these things do add a decent amount of cost that can be limiting for people. And at some point, he came and he spoke with me and he's like, listen, we'll figure stuff out. Even if they can't do all of it, you know, like I want them to do all of it, obviously. But if they can't do all of it, we can at least do some of it.
A lot of the stuff though is like zero or little cost items that just get flat out missed. Like, like I said, you know, that's a great example. I think so many builders will put their siding or, you know, in Houston, the brick, stone, whatever, stucco, and then somebody else come along after the fact and punch a hole in it to run a duct or a hose bib or whatever. But, you know, that vent needs to go through first. It needs to get flashed, and then the siding goes on. And if that had been done, that wouldn't have been an issue. And then kind of another zero cost or very little cost item to go along with that, if they had used insulated duct from that penetration to their bath fan, it wouldn't have sweated. You know, you got this cold conditioned air inside the house meeting the warm humid air. Oh, and there were no backdraft dampers either. So you've got warm moist sea air backdrafting down the pipe.
Some of that's using a builder who knows, right? Which I would say, I think that more builders on the island are, I mean, I don't know how many actually are becoming more open to.
I don't know. It's still super, super low.
But I think it is. There is going to be the curve because it's like the curve has been made for understanding how to build better for windstorm. So I think the curve will be made for this as well. Yeah. Right. Like part of, I don't know if this was before we started talking on air or while we've been talking, but having a local builder who has been building there for a long time, one of the benefits of that is understanding the best way to sequence building for windstorm. It's not just that what's actually goes up is any different. It's how you sequenced it.
Right.
It's that you know to have multiple engineering inspections for your straps so that you strap and you strap and you sheath before you're 55 feet in the air going, I think we're going to do all of this at one time during hurricane season, and we're just going to see how this shakes out. And that's one of the ones that fully collapsed was because they waited. They had a 3-story structure in the air. It was painful. It was very painful.
And it collapsed at the worst time in the framing market
ever.
Yeah,
I know.
So it went up affordable, it fell down,
and
went
he's now
back
working.
up,
he's now working on that, or I don't know if it's done. I think it's done now.
It's done now.
He worked on that house at the end of it when it was built because it had been built so poorly, and it was raining inside.
Yes.
So, anyways, but yeah, I mean, I do think that as these houses become more complex, what people want in them is more complex, then the pendulum will swing the same way for windstorm, right? Understanding what to do.
We had a really weird problem on the same house. It took a little bit to figure it out, but in the master shower, which was on an exterior wall, again the same wall that had all the penetrations that we're talking about, it's getting blasted by wind. There's no protection anywhere around it. It's just open to the prevailing wind.
Pirates Beach Canal House.
Okay.
So it's getting blasted by wind on this wall where the master shower is, and cracks were opening up through the tile floor to ceiling in the master shower. And we looked at it and we're like, what is causing these cracks? And obviously it's moving, right?
Right.
And so I said, hey, do you have any photos of this from before the tile went up? And so the homeowner's like, yeah, I think I do. So they flip through their phone and find the pictures, and all of their tile backer board joints were in a straight line floor to ceiling. If you read the tile backer board instructions, it says to stagger the joints, just like you would with your sheathing on the exterior. Yep. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is it actually gives some shear strength when it's staggered.
Right.
So when you do get a little movement, you don't get these floor to ceiling cracks. So we ended up having to take all the tile off the shower, replace all the backer board, reinstall the tile. But it was easy once you understood, why it was happening. But it's the other bathrooms in the house. The backer board was installed the same way, but they weren't having a problem because they were not on the wall that was getting blasted by the wind all day.
And the primary shower had a very delicate tile with the finish on it was extremely thin. So had it been a thicker ceramic tile with a different type of finish, we might not have noticed it for quite some time.
Yeah, maybe not.
Right.
This one also, the white crack in the dark field, like I see it. Like you come in the door and you saw it.
Yeah.
So it was a really unique situation. And the tighter we make it, the more difficult these things are, or more important it is to follow the plan 100%. So like, for instance, where they added those vents, that's a 4-inch circle. You need to cut a 6-inch square off of the siding so that you can tape and then set it, and you don't have a stop block. And he's like, well, that stop block would be ugly. I'm like, it's not ugly inside the house. I was like, this is super ugly in here. So same reason why we don't just pop a coach light directly onto the siding. We do a block behind it.
Absolutely.
Because we can flash it. I could put a head flashing on top of it if I wanted to or whatever. So a lot of simplicity, not a whole lot of room for error or room for mistakes because the error rate is so high on the island because Mother Nature is trying to take back the structure on a constant basis. But that's okay. We offset it with good times, right? Good times and good friends and activities and stuff like that.
I think the bottom line is kind of back to the like one of the very original points we made is just building a good team, but it's also paying attention to all the instructions that have been given. It's like you can build a good team, but of course, if you build a good team, technically everybody should listen, right? But that builder has to follow the instructions put out by the architect and by the building performance consultant
and make sure that their
the
trades
engineer
are following.
Yes.
Right.
Double check on their trades because at the end of the day, it is up to the trades to do that. And so if you don't have a builder who's willing, who's on site checking,
a building who's willing to get on a ladder and go 50 feet in the air to look at something.
With 30-mile-an-hour wind
with
pushing you around.
Exactly.
Right? In flip-flops to do that.
Super pregnant.
Super prego.
While smoking.
With no elevator.
And a margarita.
Let's just not die on the job site on the island.
Yes.
It would be good to go because God forbid, how many diseases have we had on this island on top of it? And then we have CDC stores stuff there that, oh my God, some of the most infectious diseases are like a block and a half away from my house.
You are like ruining my business right now. Gotta take it down a notch.
But he's
down a notch.
He's preventing a huge influx of people to the island.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, and I would like to say it's not island time. It's quality of life.
It is.
Quality of life.
It is something to be said. Yes.
All right. So I think we're about out of time. So thank you, Cate, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Cate, how is everyone going to find you if they want to hire you and do all this stuff?
My website, cateblackarchitect.com. If you go there, you can see my portfolio, learn a little bit more about me. And there's a contact form you can fill out. I'd be happy, if anyone has any questions, what it is to live and build on the island, I'm happy to answer that. I also have Instagram that I don't use very often, but there's lots of pretty photos on it. I just haven't added anyone's recently.
And none of the beach photos on my Instagram are from Cate's projects. So they're all from forensic projects that I do. So if you see beach, it's not Cate.
It's not me.
Yeah.
I'm doing my best.
Yes, that's
I'm trying.
All right. Well, thanks, Toner.
Thank you very much
for being here again.
Yeah.
And thank you all for listening and watching today. And we'll see you next time. Take care. If you found us helpful and enjoyed listening, please support us by liking and subscribing here on your podcast platform, and also join us on our YouTube channel. We want to continue to bring you high-quality content and expert guests, and your support truly helps us to continue this journey. If you have any questions for me or my guests, or any feedback for us, you can email us at podcast@yourprojectshepherd.com. Thanks again.